No matter where you are in your artistic journey, whether you're just starting off or you're a seasoned professional, if you've ever tried to sell your artwork, whether that's commissions or client work, chances are you may have some horror stories. I thought it might be interesting to hear yours. I'll tell you mine. This may be therapeutic. Let's talk about it live. Greetings, people of the internet. Works Art Labs welcome mad creators to the underground laboratory where we create robots, alien zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. And sometimes, like today, we do that thing live, and we're going to do that live today. We're doing this live right now. So yeah, I'm always looking for topics, and I thought I want something that's very interactive, very interesting. And I know, like I said, no matter where you are, if you've done artwork as an exchange for money or for, you know, a favor or whatever, you may have run into some issues with that. I've heard it. I mean, everyone's got stories like that. So I think it's something everyone can relate to. So why not put it out to you guys in the chat, and I'll kind of talk about some of my issues and maybe somehow some ways that we can avoid this kind of just interaction in the future. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and I've dealt with this so many times, and as I continue, I mean, I get a little better at it, but these things still pop up. So let's talk about these kind of client horror stories, commission horror stories, whatever you got. Let me know in the comment section. I am going to draw another character design while we do that. So let's get to it.
All right, so we are live once again, and this one is this is more of an impromptu thing. Usually I let people know, I try to let people know, like when I do Artcasters or whatever, that I'm going to be going live. So right now there's actually no one in the chat right now, so if you are watching, you want to jump in the chat, do that, and hopefully people will start rolling in. But I really wanted this to be more of a communal type thing, because I wanted to just talk about, I wanted to talk about some of the, I put horror stories, but just, if you are, I was going to say professional artist, but it doesn't matter if you're professional or not. If you've ever done commissions for anyone, or if you've ever done any type of artwork or any kind of creative service for anyone, then you've probably run into some crazy things, and some of it's just like, some of it's like misunderstanding with clients, some of it's just bad clients, some of it's things that you did wrong. And a lot of these things, I think, especially in the beginning, and I find that the more I do professional work and the more I work for clients, the better I get at kind of seeing red flags and things. So it doesn't happen as much as it used to. And also, when you start to get a little better with like contracts or things, you learn how to put certain things in that will kind of help you avoid that. We can talk about that and everything. So we got that OnlyFan. How's it going? I was listening for a while, exercising, but I forgot headphones. All right, that's cool, awesome. Well, welcome to the chat. So yeah, as people start to roll in, yeah, definitely. If you, like I said, if you've done any of this stuff, let me know if you have any, cautionary tales or anything like that. I'll let you know some of mine. But first, I just want to talk about what I'm drawing today. So, if you watched any of these live streams before, you will know that I've been doing like these character sketches, and a lot of these characters are characters that are from this RPG game that my son is developing. So I'm just kind of using that, and that's another, we can talk about that, because we can get into talking about like working for free and all that stuff, but there are certain situations where maybe you want to work for free or whatever. Like with this, I am sort of helping my son out, so obviously I'm not charging him anything for it. But I am trying to get something out of that, out of the work. I'm not doing it like kind of for nothing, and that's why I'm using it for these live streams. So while I'm getting a benefit because I have some content that I can share with you guys and everything, I'm also doing something to kind of help my son with his game out. So this is, he's got a lot of different races in his RPG game. This is a race called the Fungari. And as you can tell, they're sort of like mushroom people. And with each one of his little different races, they've got different sub-races. So I'm trying to remember which one this was. This is the Amanita, I think is how it's pronounced. The most common of the Fungari, often easily identifiable. I'm having a hard time reading today. By their large mushroom-shaped growths on their head. So that's that character, and then there's a few other, the couple other guys that I haven't got to. Is another one called the chitlin, covered in thick protective layers similar to lichen. These fungi are larger than most and heavily resilient. And then the mold, M-O-U-L-D, slender and strange. These fungi are typically covered with either viscous mucus or thin layer of hair-like structures. So anyway, so those are some of the characters. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on right now. I am working in, we got Tyler Blake in the chat. How's it going? And let me know if you guys have any war stories or anything you want to tell as far as working with clients or just doing artwork for others or anything, or even trying to, if you're just starting out or whatever, if you're trying to do work for others, we can talk about all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so yeah, right now I'm just working in Clip Studio Paint, and then what I'm going to do is I'll end up printing this out, and then I'll actually add some color to it and everything. So that's what we're working on. So let me get a drink here real quick. All right, so just talking about, like I said, lately I've been getting a lot better as far as, I've been trying to do more personal work, really. So I haven't been doing as much client work as I used to, but when you especially when you first start off, there's a lot of things that either you don't know about or whatever that you're just starting off, you're learning. So there's things that you do that probably aren't the best, like business practices, and because of that, sometimes you work with clients that aren't really the best clients, or you're just not really in a position to educate them or set up contracts and everything that helps in that regard. And there's always things like, with every client, you're going to have certain things. Like there's always, almost one thing you always see is like the hurry up and wait thing. Everyone's got their deadlines they want to meet, and then you give them stuff, or we need this by this, and then you give them the work, and then you wait for them to come back to you, and you're kind of like, well, I thought you had a deadline. I thought you had to get this thing done. And so when the ball's out of your court, you're kind of waiting, and you're waiting to hear back from them. And it's just like, well, they sounded like they were in a rush, but now they're not. And as you're going, the clock's ticking on their deadline, but you're waiting on them. So there's that type. That's almost a given. That's why, when you're spelling out your contracts, you need to say, do it in stages, and then, we're waiting, there's a period where you're waiting for the client, and anything like that is going to extend the overall scope of the project as far as the time frame and everything. But anyway, let me get back to the chat real quick. We've got Tyler Blake art. I was doing a polygraph wooden funeral urn for a client. Oh, that's interesting. And didn't think to add a proviso about design changes. What started as 2 figures got expanded to 5. One at a time, of course. Yeah, and that's kind of what's in the industry is known as scope creep, where the scope of the project just gets larger and larger, and yeah, and that's I've been guilty. All these things, I've been guilty of before, but I just did a contract today, or I sent out a proposal today, and I specifically spelled out how many characters are in this particular cartoon or whatever that I'm doing. So stuff like that, and that goes very well for anyone that's like doing commissions. And you'll see this when you go to, like, if you go to a convention and people are doing commissions, it'll say single character, or it might just say like a headshot, because people come up and you'll get those people that are like, oh, commission's $20. Draw this big fight scene. I want the Hulk fighting the Thing, and I want Mr. Fantastic coming around in the background, and all this other stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I don't do a lot of commissions. And when I do, I specifically state that this is, for one, this is a sketch. This isn't finished art that you're going to reproduce or anything like that. But it's this is just kind of for your own personal use, and it is one single character or whatever. So yeah, definitely you want to factor anything like that, changes, all that stuff should be factored into your into your proposal or your contract or whatever. So, but yeah, I've been through, and it's not always the clients. I mean, I've had situations where luckily I had one major one in my career where I totally messed up, and it lost me a client. It was a pretty good client, a pretty high profile client. And from then on, I never made that mistake too. But this was a long time ago. So long, in fact, it was before most people even had now everything, you got your phone, so you can take photos of your artwork and stuff. So nowadays you might not need scanners as much, but there was a time where definitely not everyone had scanners. It was before and at this point, I don't even think a lot of people had printers. A lot of times you would send stuff out to be printed. But this was in the 90s, and this was a time where a lot of, most people had fax machines. If you're young, you may not even know what a fax machine is, but it was just basically a way, it's almost like you can feed your whatever. If you've got a sheet of paper, you feed it through the fax machine, and then on the other end, the other person's fax machine would spit that out. Maybe you heard of those. But anyway, so I was working on storyboards, and if anyone has ever worked on any kind of a storyboard project, they're kind of all the same in that they always have to be done like next day, or I've never had a storyboard project where you got this isn't due until a week from now. They always let you know the day before, and it's always a rush job. The good thing is, and this is another tip for something you want to add in your contracts, are rush fees. Anything that you've got to put other clients aside to make room for getting this rush project done, or anything that's going to take you away from your normal everyday life. I mean, people have lives, so if you have to drop everything to work on this project, you need to get paid a little extra. It needs to be worth it for you to do that. So like every other storyboard project, this needed to be done right away. So I didn't have back then, like I said, the way I worked on storyboards back then, and now if I was doing storyboards, I'd do it a lot differently because it'd be digital. But this was for kind of two clients. One was a major production animation studio, I guess you would call, or network. And it was using some of their characters, but it was for like a major product. So it was kind of these two different things that kind of came together and it was kind of cool because you get to, put both of those on your resume, assuming that everything didn't go horribly wrong. So this is kind of what I'm leading to. So, and again, not everything your client fault. This was totally my fault, but basically what it was this thing had to be complete, and I had to take the way I worked was I would get copies made of my drawings. I'd ink the drawings to get copies made, and then I would do marker renderings, kind of like what you're going to see here. And I still kind of do that for this. I'll actually go to like a Office Max or something like that and get printouts, because the markers I use work really well over photocopies. So that's kind of, that was kind of my process. I draw it because sometimes if I would have done the marker over the original, sometimes it would smudge. So I didn't usually do that. Plus I wanted sort of that black and white copy. So anyway, so typically I would go to a place and have things printed off, but because this was a deadline, it was overnight, every place was closed. I think this was before like the 24-hour, like Kinko's. They used to have 24-hour Kinko's. Either this was before that or there just wasn't one in my area. So I had the brilliant idea that what I was going to do was I'm just going to run my designs through the fax machine, and then I would color on top of those. And then basically because this was for a television commercial, and so each one was like in the frame, the shape of a television, which now is kind of a rectangle, but back then, the old tube TVs where it was there's kind of a curvature, so you kind of got that look. So So yeah, so that's what I did, was I ran my drawings through the fax machine. So, and then it spit them out and basically made a copy. I basically, because the fax machine had a copy function. And there were different fax machines, but most of them kind of came on a roll. And it wasn't like copy paper, it was something else. I don't know how to explain it, but it was a different kind of paper. And what happened was, I printed everything out, I did the marker rendering, it didn't smudge or anything like that, it looked great. I took out my spray adhesive, I sprayed it all, put it on boards, really nice and everything. Hand delivered it to the client the next day. To the client, meaning the agency that I was working at. They looked at it, they said, oh, this is great. And then when they went to present it, I don't know if they mailed it off or whatever, but in that span of time, something with the chemicals of that fax paper and the spray adhesive, I mean, it was not good. I mean, it started peeling off, and it started looking like, the splotchy, like, chemicals mixed together that weren't supposed to mix together, and it was just a huge disaster. And basically I lost those two clients. Not only did I lose the agency that I was doing the work for, but I didn't get to really put like those two clients, which would have looked really nice on my resume. And it was, like I said, it was a total disaster. The person I had to work with had to totally, smooth everything over, buy the end client, a nice bottle of wine and all this stuff. And it was, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what I could have done differently, just because of the time frame, but just, trying to improvise and using that fax machine, that was a nightmare. So that was probably, I still look back that as one of my big failings in my career. But it was, it was trying to meet deadlines. And the one thing that I always pride myself on is, I think in the amount of time that I've been doing this, and it's been a while, I've never really missed a deadline. So, those are super important. So you definitely want to make sure always kind of under promise, over deliver. So if you can, and if you have the ability, you want to let people, you want to give yourself a little extra time. Like if you think you can do this in like 3 days, tell them 5, and then deliver it in 3, or deliver it in 4, and that gives you a little leeway or whatever. So kind of, that's just some advice, something that I do, which now if anyone's watching that, they might know. And sometimes that's not the case, but you always, I always try to, under promise, over deliver. And in saying under promise, you don't want to obviously you don't want to say like, you're not going to get much, but then deliver something. You want to give them something that's attractive, that they're going to be totally happy with, but then if you can add a little extra, that's awesome. So Tyler kind of brings up a good point in that, and in the title of this, I put freelance horror stories, but they don't have to be freelance. This could be, at your day job or whatever, any kind of a situation like this. So, but he says, I'm assuming he, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm at the day job, gotta go. Oh, you gotta go. Okay, yeah, definitely catch this. So as far as I know, this is what you do when you don't let people know that you're gonna go live. But I'll just keep, kind of talking, and I'll kind of go into a little more of my own stories. But I might just, if this tends to be a slow day on the chat, I may just talk about this topic again, or something a little different, because what will happen is that people will watch this on the replay, and then they'll leave comments and everything. And the other thing is, when I'm doing these videos, I'm always trying to come up with ideas for future videos, things to talk about, because the live thing's a little different, so it's kind of off the cuff and everything. So I definitely want stuff that I can talk about. So if you guys have topics or anything you want help with, or anything like that, I figured this would be a good one for that, because everyone's got questions about, doing art for a living or whatever, or all that kind of stuff. But an interesting place you can go to for humor, or just to hear some of these other stories that people have, but working with their clients or whatever. There's a couple good Twitter handles. One is Clients from Hell, If you search that on Twitter. The other one is For Exposure, which basically For Exposure is just they're both great, but For Exposure is just all of these people just asking for work for free, and the sense of entitlement, I guess, of when. I mean, they're just so like taken aback when people actually expect to be paid for the work they do, and then they'll go into, it's just funny to read some of these where people are just like, you should do this for free. I can't, it's like it's just bizarre what people think. It's like, or it's like, oh, it's just drawing. There's nothing to it. I mean, I can't believe you're trying to charge for drawing. There's people out working, working like construction jobs and stuff. You should be happy to be able to draw and should give it for free and everything. And obviously I don't agree with that. Somebody who has done work in constructions and everything like that, it's not easy. That's why I draw for a living, because I don't want to do that. The first jobs I ever had were digging ditches for my dad had a swimming pool company. So although anytime you're going to dig a swimming pool, you've got like a big backhoe or something, but if there's if you're digging, you have to dig all the pipes for all the the trenches for all the pipes, or if you're doing a spa, then usually you have to dig that by hand, and that I've done a few of those, and that's a nightmare. And that's why I was like, well, you know what, I think I'd rather draw for a living. And it is not as hard as construction or those type of jobs, but it is work, and it does take skill, and you should be compensated for that. I mean, it's not something not everyone can do. So we've got Amano001. How's it going in the chat? If you guys have any questions about, I don't know, we can do questions about pricing. We can just, again, talk about, times where we've done work for clients and it didn't really work out. But we had talked, before we were talking a little bit about the scope creep, where the job starts to become bigger than what you assumed, and you're kind of on the hook for that if you don't work it in the contract that you only have X amount of revisions or whatever. But early on in my career, I made that mistake too. I was working on this logo, and I'll never forget it because it still haunts me today. But it was for this company that made these. And you just work with some weird, just unusual stuff that you wouldn't even think like this is an actual industry. But it was a company that made drill bits specifically for breaking into safes. So you may think that is pretty nefarious, that people are buying these drill bits, to kind of rob banks or something like that. But there's actually a lot of legitimate reasons for that, because whether it's somebody has a safe, somebody passes away or whatever, and there's something in the safe, and it's their family don't have combination. There are some reasons, or if somebody gets locked out of their own safe, or for whatever reason, they have to hire a company to do that, kind of like a locksmith. But it was just a company that designed these special drill bits for breaking into safes. And while I'm on this, I don't know. I had another client a while back. Actually, this I don't think this was a client of mine. I think it was a client that I was doing through a day job. But then I think actually after that, I think I did some stuff on my own. But I did. Speaking of drill bits, I did another job for a company that designed drill bits for brain surgery, and those were like the nastiest things to look at. Just they're kind of encased in these things, and the drill bit like popped out, and it's just very weird. And obviously, as grotesque as it sounds, when you do brain surgery, you have to go through the skull, so you have to have these drill bits to do that. So I went from designing drill bits for cracking safes to brain surgery. So that's kind of weird. Totally different. It wasn't like I was that was my niche. Like I was doing drill bits for different companies. No matter what you do, it just so happened that those two kind of came into my world or whatever. But back to what I was talking about before, this project. It was a logo project, and the design was, it was like almost like the Arm and Hammer logo, where that you get the arm with the hammer, obviously, but this arm, it was like a muscular arm. It had a drill bit in the hand, and it was kind of slamming down, and it was in a circle, and then the type around it. And this is early on, and I did not put into my contract I didn't put into the contract different revisions or whatever. And this thing just went on and on and on forever. I mean, it was just the revisions after revisions. This person, certain people, they there's people that know what they want, and if you deliver, and if you have to work towards delivering what they want. But then there's people that don't know what they want, and it's like, I'll know it when I see it. But not only did I have to redo the typer a number of times because the way it wrapped around the circle and everything, then we get that, and then you'd have to, I'd do this illustration of this hand, and at first it was stylized, and he said, oh, it doesn't look right, and so I did one that was pretty much, I mean, I spent a lot of time with looking at the anatomy and getting the muscles and all that stuff with the arms, so it was perfect. It was the anatomy was perfect, and then they didn't like the way it looked, and I'm like, well, that's what that's what it looks like. So, so we went back and forth from stylized to realistic and all this stuff, and it was a lot of back and forth and everything. But it just kept going on and on. And then the drill would change, and then I don't know how I got out of that, but eventually I did. But it's like, if you don't have it spelled out in the contract, I mean, what do you do? I mean, you either keep going, or you just tell them to get lost. So so anyway, those are some of those stories. But I've got tons of those. And sometimes you have to go through that kind of thing before you kind of learn, and once you go through that, you don't make the same mistake twice. And one thing that I always like to do, and that's why one of the reasons why I do these videos, and I wanted to talk about this, is so if you're kind of, maybe if you're just starting off, that you can learn from this, so you don't have to make those same mistakes. I do the same thing. If there's a new industry that I'm going into, a new kind of client, or anything like that, or there's something new that I'm trying to learn, I'll go on YouTube, and I did a lot of that with right now what I'm doing, where I'm trying to kind of do these digital products and build these passive income streams. I didn't know anything about that in the beginning, but I didn't want to just go into it like, oh, I'll try it out, we'll see what works. I watched a lot of videos on what other people were doing, so hopefully, and I heard some of the mistakes other people made, so once you know that, you can kind of know how to avoid that. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend. So, all right, we got Squatchy in the chat. How's it going, Squatchy? Let's see. So back to the Amano001 comment. I really feel you about that. I deal with a lot regarding the comment. I know when I know when I see it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just like I think I'm dyslexic, because just like reading comments and things like that is like difficult for me. I always mix things up, but it's weird because, in school, this may be a topic too that I can talk about, but in school, I was not the best student. It just wasn't, school wasn't designed for the way I learn. And, and because of that, I always thought that, I was stupid and everything, because I was in like remedial classes and things like that. And then later you get out and you start, I'm talking about watching videos and things and learning. That's one of the best ways I learn, but different people learn different ways. So whereas I kind of, all this time when I was in school, I thought, well, I get horrible grades. I mean, some of the people, they don't, like I watch my kids, they don't have to study or do anything. They're just good at this stuff. They hardly ever do homework, and they get straight A's because they learn a different way than like I did. But then I soon learned, when I got out in the real world, I started doing this, that, I can do this stuff. I can learn, I can be a successful artist all on my own. And it's just because I found a way to teach myself and learn different than kind of the way the school system was set up. But anyway, but I went through all kinds of testing and stuff like that, and I was never diagnosed with dyslexia, but I don't know, because I mean, it seems like I have a lot of those same issues. So I don't know if it was misdiagnosed or whatever, but I definitely have trouble, reading and things like that with, but I don't know if that's either here nor there, but anyway, so back to the drawing where we're at now. We're go ahead and we're inking in this guy, and this is, what is this? I think this is a Fude pen. I think it's Kiritaki that I'm using. Very nice pen. I really do like it when I'm not using an actual dip brush, and like a brush and you dip it in ink. I like to use these brush pens, and they're really good also for like commission sketches and things like that, because you don't have to bring a bottle of ink and worry about it spilling over or anything. But yeah, Squatchy, if you have any stories, we're kind of just talking about freelance horror stories or working with clients, or whether it's like mistakes that you've made, or just bad clients or miscommunication, anything like that. And like I said, since this is kind of a slow day in the chat, we'll probably we'll kind of approach this again at a later date. And I definitely got to let people know a little more in advance on the chat when I'm going to be going live, because this is a weird day. Usually I let people know after the Artcast. It's like, oh, I'm going to go live the next day, so I know I'm going to get a lot of people that chime in like, oh, I missed it. But yeah, but I mean, I hear a lot of complaints about YouTube, how they're not getting notifications, but I don't know, typically it seems like when you go live, it seems like they tend to push that a little better. I know a lot of times people that I follow, when they go live, like I won't get alerted when they just put up a video half the time, but usually when they go live I do. So so I've noticed that sometimes we got more people that we've got a few people. We do have people watching. We just don't have as many people in the chat. But so that's kind of what's going on. That's the way people are kind of being notified and everything. But yeah, so I kind of like this character design. I didn't know exactly what direction to go there. I guess they're sort of like mystics, in a way. So I wanted to kind of have. And when I do this stuff, I mean, a lot of times I'll just pull up, like funguses and things like that, and I'm like, oh, how can I work that into a character? I use Pinterest a lot for inspiration, and that could be another topic too, as far as what do you guys use for reference or inspiration? Well, we talked about like art inspiration, but not so much reference. So I wanted him to be, he's kind of like a mystical guy, but I there's just all those weird, not just the typical mushrooms that you normally see, but like those growths that kind of grow on trees. You can kind of see those around their arms and everything like that. But yeah, this is kind of a fun one. So let's see. What haven't I talked about? What was that? There was something I was going to mention, and now it's escaping me. Okay. So the other thing, obviously, when you doing like artwork as a profession and everything, and you're working with clients and everything, getting like even when you have contracts, a lot of times getting paid is an issue. So I had one project that I worked on, and it was for it was a licensed project for. I live in Arizona, so this is just to show my age. This is back when the baseball team, the Arizona Diamondbacks, first, they're an expansion team. So when they first came to town, and so that'll give you an idea how long ago this was. But there are people, they've got this new team, so they want to jump in and get merchandise and everything. So I was approached to do some artwork for it was baseball. And some other things too, but the baseball, basically it was, how baseballs are, how there's those two, it's kind of where the stitching is. It's basically two kind of, for lack of a better terminology, it's almost like the shape of like, I guess like a, I don't know. Anyway, these two things that kind of come together and they're stitched. Like it's almost like the shape of like two maxi pads, I guess. But anyway, so they're stitched together. So one side would have like the logo and all that kind of stuff on it, and then the other side would be like snakeskin, because of the Diamondbacks. So they wanted me to illustrate the snakeskin. So do all that stuff, and then we were also working on some designs for other things using that, like. There was like a mug that had that design on it, the snakeskin design, and t-shirts, all that kind of stuff, or whatever. But the baseball was the main thing. That was the thing that that they were really hoping would sell and everything. And it was one of these things where I did have a contract and everything. But what sometimes what happens is you'll sign a contract with one person, and they will have like a partnership going, and then something happened with that partnership. The guy that I signed up with and his partner just basically just took everything and just left and did something and just basically cut the other guy out of it. And so the guy I'm working with is trying to deal with that, trying to, I guess I could have tried to go after this guy myself, but I didn't have a contract with that guy. And the guy that I'm working for, he's trying to get paid himself. He's trying to get stuff back, from this other guy that basically stole everything. So I didn't want to like go after him. And I just figured, well, if this guy can, settle his lawsuit and get whatever is coming to him, then I'll get whatever profits. But this thing eventually, it actually got produced. Like my artwork is out there on this baseball that's being sold in like the pro shops and all this kind of stuff. And I got like, I don't know if I got it. I think I did get paid something for it, because I had. That's the other thing, is you definitely want to get money up front. So I did get something, but there was, in the agreement, I was supposed to get a percentage and a very small percentage, I don't know, like a penny or something from every baseball sold, or so, and obviously I didn't get that because everything was just stolen. And that's the other thing, is like a lot of times people will, a lot of people have this notion that if they commission you or if they pay you to do something, and if they don't end up using it or bringing it to the market, that they don't have to pay for it. But that's not really because you already put the work into it, whether they use it or not, that's kind of on them. You still need to be compensated for that. So maybe this other guy felt that, oh, well, we paid for this, this artwork to be done, and so I don't owe this guy anything else, even though it was in the contract. But so stuff like that. And a lot of times it's not really worth going after. It's just, so that's kind of one of those cases. But you want to try to protect yourself as much as possible. Anyway, so let's go back to, I just kind of want to draw our attention back to the character design here. We're doing right now. We're just coloring. We're doing some marker renderings. I think I'm using this is the Artist Loft brand of markers. I did a review on them a while back, and when you do these reviews, you're basically just it's all first impressions, So there's really, you're opening up the package, you're using the tools and everything. But anything that happens over time, like for instance, if the marker starts to fade, if more than normal, you won't know that when you do the review. So I gave these markers a favorable review, and I still use them because I have them, and because they're inexpensive brush tips. So for the price, it's not bad. But one thing I found is that these markers, they fray really bad. These are the ones you get at Michael's, the Michael's brand. Like half of them, just the tips, they just start to fray, and there's nothing you can do with them. So not necessarily I'd recommend them, but I will. I think next week I'm gonna release a video on another set of markers that do have a brush tip, that are inexpensive. And so right now I'm using the Copic markers. Those are kind of the industry standard. If you ever watched any of my marker review videos, I actually compare everything to Copics, because those are kind of the ones everyone loves so much, and they're pretty much the best you can get. The only problem is they're so expensive, so I'm always on the lookout for something that's a little better. So if you're interested in that type of thing, I will have a video coming out where I do review a new marker that I really do like. So and you'll see me using those markers in future videos and stuff. So right now I'm just kind of collecting. I'm getting more and more of these markers, and I just use whatever. Like you can see, I kind of went from Copic to the Artist Loft to whatever I just kind of have on hand. And I'm not really sold on any particular marker. I just use whatever. So, but it's good to know that there's more markers coming out that are little make more sense economically for for starving artists and stuff like that. And also there's I've got another set of markers that I just ordered that I'll be doing a review. I haven't obviously recorded that because I don't have the markers yet, but I'll have some more of that stuff out there. So let's see, so we got, Copics are nice, or Copics, I always pronounce them wrong. Copics are nice. I switch between Prismacolors and Copics. I've done review on Prismacolors. I don't know if I like them as much as the Copic markers, and of course I had, like, with the problem with the Prismacolor, when I did the review, I had very limited amount of them. I bought like a small pack, and then I went and bought some other one. But the good thing about the Prismacolors is they have two different styles. One is a brush tip, and the other, I think, is either a bullet or a chisel tip. But you just got to be careful when you buy those, if you do want that brush tip, that you're making sure you've got those, because they look very similar. And the Blick markers, those are ones that I've been wanting to review. I just haven't got to, but they also have the brush tip, and they're pretty reasonable. So, but I'll be the ones I'm going to be reviewing next are the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. And Spectrum Noir makes a number of different markers, but the Illustrator ones have the brush tip. And just as a little spoiler alert, I really like them. So, but you can watch that video. So anyway, what else? There was another thing I was going to mention, and I can't remember. As far as, the client. Oh, we got Victor joining in. Hey, Victor. We're talking about, I want to get some ideas on any kind of horror stories you have working with clients, or just, times maybe you were doing like a commission for somebody, either you messed up or it was just a nightmare type situation. That's kind of what we're talking about. So I didn't know that the Blicks were refillable. So yeah, and these the ones here, these Artist Lofts are not refillable, but they're cheap. Like, even after I did my review, even after I noticed that they started to fray, I still went out and bought like a pack of grays, just because they're super cheap, and if you get them with that Michael's discount, I just needed some gray markers, so I'm like, well, I'll just use them until they start to fray, and I'll probably get my money's worth out of them, because they were, with that coupon, they were super cheap. So, and you can always use gray markers, but I definitely have to try out some of those Blick markers. But it seems like more and more, before it was like, especially the inexpensive one, it was really difficult to find any with the brush tips. So now that you're starting to see more of that's pretty awesome and more reasonable. It's almost like with the Cintiq alternatives. At one point, if you wanted to draw on a screen, you had 0 options other than a Cintiq, and that was the way it was for a long time. So I always used and even really any tablet. I always used an Intuos for a long time, and then it's funny because even eventually some of the Cintiq alternatives started coming out, and I did buy one, and I had to send it back because I didn't really like it. It was, I forget, it was a Huion, but I don't want to give the impression that Huions aren't good, because this was a very early Huion, and since then they've been really putting out some really great tablets. I've seen a lot of great reviews on them and everything. But now there are so many different options if you want, that you can get inexpensively. But when I did buy my Cintiq, I did buy a used one, because they really tend to hold their value pretty well. So if you can get your hands on a used Cintiq and pay about half the price, that's kind of what I would recommend. That's what I did. I just got one on eBay. So this is another marker, while we're talking about markers, that this is probably my favorite. The only thing is they aren't alcohol, they're xylene based, so I have to be really careful, because while they are better at not smudging over actual inks, they do tend to bleed a little bit when you're going over a copy, which is what this is. So while most other alcohol-based markers, if you go get a photocopy, like kind of like you would get like a Xerox or something, that like a Kinko's or something, they don't bleed at all, but they will a little bit with these ad markers. But I really do like those. They hold a lot of ink, and they have only one tip, but it's a different kind of tip. It's soft and it's sort of like a chisel tip, but you can pretty much use it like you would a brush tip and everything. So those are my favorite. So yeah, let's see. So Victor's got a question. Working with 2 store owners for one company. My second freelance job during college, I was helping a friend with a project. I quoted $300 for 3 days work. Ended up being 2 weeks worth of constant changes. Yeah, we were talking about that. We were talking about scope creep earlier, where projects just get out of hand because we don't put into the contract, actually what you get or different stages or how many alterations you can make and everything. Both owners hated each other. That's almost like what happened with the one I was talking about, where we had these 2 owners that kind of split up, and one of them just took all the stuff and went away, and I assume made a lot of money with it, and me and the other guy didn't get any of it. Let's see. Both owners hated each other and would make me do changes despite one another. I lost. Oh man, that sounds like a nightmare. Oh man. And of course, I figured Scott Swatchy was going to come through with the. He was going to come through with the tattooing, because I'm sure he's got a lot of stories with dealing with tattooings. But yeah, every day in tattooing, dealing with clients is a nightmare. Yeah, I can see that, because the one thing when you're dealing with tattooing, it's people that typically aren't used to purchasing artwork. They just want a tattoo, so they might not totally understand. It's kind of like your average person, and that's why, like, I've had people in the past saying, why don't you just advertise your services like in a paper or something like that? But then you just get the people that aren't typically used to buying art and don't really know what to look for when shopping for an artist or anything like that. And it's kind of like, it's just kind of a nightmare, where at least if you're working with people that are in the industry, they kind of know what to expect, and you don't have to deal with a lot of that. Because I've had people come up to me, like one time I was getting some of these copies made so I could do one of these videos, and somebody noticed my artwork and they wanted my card, and I don't know anything about this person. They could be very wealthy and willing to pay a lot of money for, or not a lot of money, but what something, a piece of artwork would typically cost. But typically when you're dealing with people that aren't used to buying artwork, anytime you give them a price, like if I was going to do logo designs for just the average person, if I gave them my logo price, they would be like, thrown aback. Or typically what happens, especially if it's through email, you give them a price and you never hear anything again. So, all right, so let's see, we'll get to some of these comments real quick, because we're getting close to almost wrapping this up. It's too bad some of you guys just joined in a little late, because again, full disclosure, the way I'm doing these live streams, although it is me live talking, the video is pre-recorded, so I'm just kind of talking over that. That way I can pay more attention to the chat. So when the piece finishes, I can't just continue. I got to kind of cut it. So that's just kind of how I'm doing these live streams. But so let me get to some of these comments here. Let's see. So Mano001, I work as a concept designer for toys full time, and while the job sounds good, I love the brainstorming and sketching, but higher ups like me like to make changes at 1 a.m. at night before the presentation is due. Yeah, that sounds a lot like I was talking about before with storyboards. Anytime you're working, but that sounds really cool. I always wanted to kind of do that, or do toy design. I've done a few freelance projects. Like I did some stuff for, this was a long time ago, so I'm pretty sure I can mention it. I did sign an NDA, but it was so long ago that I don't know if they ever brought this thing to the market or not, but it was really cool. What it was a project for Velcro, and it was they were doing these like blocks, these like foam blocks, and they basically had Velcro, so you can build things, like kids can build things with these giant blocks, and they stick together so they're not going to fall over or whatever. But what was really cool is, because they were sort of foam, the way they were designed was that the pack, and these are big blocks, but the pack was almost like, the space bags, the vacuum seal thing, that's how they were packaged. So all the air was sucked out of them, so they could fit a lot of these blocks in one thing. And then they can put them, on the store shelves, and it's not huge, but then when you take them out, they just kind of go back to normal size, and you got all these cool blocks. So I don't know if they actually did anything, but I did some of the concept designs for that. But that, and then I did some other stuff for clients, but I haven't done a lot of toy designs. But that sounds something really cool. So yeah, I think we're getting close to wrapping this thing up. But so. But yeah, that sounds like a really cool thing. I always wanted to do like toy designs. So, but I could see anytime you have something like that that's got to go to the market or whatever. I mean, there's going to be a lot of late nights and things like that. But storyboards, man, that's. I don't think I've worked in any other industry. You know, it's like I just don't understand why they can't. You know, they've got a lot of people waiting for them because the storyboard's the first thing, and they want to get the production going on. So it's almost like. Other than the script, it's almost like once the script gets finalized, that's almost like the next step, and they've got so many other things waiting that can't happen until they have the storyboards. So typically, it needs to be done like it's almost always has to be done like next day or like now or yesterday or whatever. So yeah, I definitely get it about the toy design, but. Yeah, that's cool. That sounds like a really cool gig. Yeah, I wonder. I'm curious if it's similar to like having worked on staff as a game designer. If it's kind of like that, where it's the work environment is really cool, but you know there are those deadlines and things like that pop up. But that's part of being a professional. So right now, just adding some highlights and everything. But I think we're going to wrap it up. So thank you to everyone in the chat. I appreciate it. Got another comment. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it before this thing's over, so I might just have to close it out. But thanks again, everyone in the chat. Really appreciate it.
That's going to do it for another live stream. Another character down. But yeah, I want to know, these are always good, but sometimes I have trouble coming up with topics that I think can relate to everyone, that everyone can get involved with. So if you have something you want me to talk about on a future live stream, let me know. We can kind of hash it out, and it should be fun. I enjoy doing these. I enjoy kind of chatting up with you guys. So just let me know what you want to talk about, and we'll do it. So yeah, that's going to do it for another episode. I will see you guys later. That is all.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Circworks on social media. Do you like making comics? Then go to Circworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.